So let's start with a half butterfly. Right leg straight, left foot to the inside of the thigh. Feel free to support this knee, forehead, forearms. Feel free to sit on something. The two areas of influence, the back of the thigh, those are your hamstrings, so we want to feel it here. The other area of influence is your back, so let your back round. You may or may not feel it. I'll put it to you this way, generally speaking. If you're really healthy in your back and your spine, you're probably not going to feel it. That would actually be preferable, as strange as that might sound, because usually we feel the postures, okay? But in this instance, forward folding like this, if you have a relatively healthy back and spine, you're probably not going to feel much. You might feel a little bit of stretching. That's good. What you want, I don't want you to do this, okay? Pulling yourself aggressively down until you feel something in your back. Why? Because by the time you feel it, you may be creating damage. Not over the short term, but the long term. Okay, so in other words, you can probably do this today without damaging your spine. But the trouble with this is it's a habit. You get in the habit of doing it. Oh, that feels good. You may not even think about it. You just come into the pose, you grab your foot. You pull yourself down. So again, I'm going to encourage you to not do that because it will likely become a habit, and then over time you will likely create an injury in your back without warning. Again, you're probably not going to get a warning. You're just one day going to get up and your back's going to have shooting pain or something like that, and you may not even connect it with what I just said. You may not even realize, oh, it was from that bad habit in yin yoga, okay? So please just trust me on this. I know it might feel very good, but please just trust me. And the reason I'm spending so much time on this is almost every single class I teach in person, I see someone in the class doing just that. Okay, so I'll do the same thing live. I'll talk at length about not doing that, the reasons you shouldn't do it, and they're just sitting there still pulling themselves down. So the way I look at it is I'm not an adult babysitter. I am here to educate you, to share with you what I've learned, and if you decide, hell, yoga teacher doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm going to pull myself down, it's totally fine. That is your decision to make, okay? But again, my advice, I wouldn't do it. It's not worth it, okay? Now, if your back is not perfectly healthy, like mine is damaged at this point, when I come here, I do feel it in my back, okay? So the irony is, if I come into this posture, I feel it in my back. Ultimately, again, for healthy back, not desirable, not desirable. Healthy back, healthy joints, probably shouldn't feel much. Mine is not healthy, completely healthy, okay? So, again, many of you know the story that I hurt my back in a move a while back, and since then it's been a struggle. It goes back and forth. I've had it where it seemed completely healed. I had full range of motion without any pain, any discomfort. And then, it seemingly out of nowhere got injured again. I got sick for a little while. I was in bed for a little bit. And then when I went back to moving, all of a sudden it was like, it acted up again, which makes sense because, ultimately being immobile for extended periods of time, not great for our health. It's not really the ideal situation. So anyway, that's my story. That's my journey. Again, back injury, very, very common for us. Unfortunately, mine is just, that was my journey with it. I'm at an age where, moving a whole apartment worth of furniture and stuff on your own might create back problems. So as I come into this and I feel this is actually therapeutic. I'm not afraid of that discomfort or pain because there's already damage. That's why I'm feeling that. So this is the tricky thing that can throw a lot of people off. If I am healthy, then I basically want to avoid doing painful things, not uncomfortable things, but painful things. Generally, pain is going to indicate that I'm overdoing it if I am perfectly healthy. Let's switch sides. So the key there, it's the trick for us as modern Americans, very few of us, especially as we enter into our late 30s, 40s, very few of us have perfect health. Very, very few. Okay, the way that yoga teachers are trained these days in America is to teach to a sick population. Unfortunately, things that would be perfectly fine for a healthy person to do, actually not just fine, actually benefit them. Sometimes in some yoga trainings, you're told not to do that with the general population because so many of them are injured and sick. Okay, so that's just something worth knowing, because you may be injured and not know it. You may be sick and not know it. You may have damage in your back and not know it. Okay, so if you're coming forward here and you're feeling like I do, like a lot of sensitivity, a lot of sensation, some pain, then what is that telling me? Is that telling me, oh, I'm perfectly healthy and I'm overdoing it? No, it's telling me there's already damage. Now, when I realize there's already damage, there is a assessment that I need to make. Now, I can make that assessment alone. I can make it in conjunction with my yoga teacher, therapist, like a yoga therapist, a physical therapist. I can make it in conjunction with my doctor. And they may all have different opinions about it. But at the end of the day, it's your responsibility, because it's going to be your decision. Again, if you ask 3 doctors about a procedure or their opinion of something, you may get 3 different opinions. I know that might surprise you, but that's the way of the world. That's why people get a second opinion about things, okay? So it's not that all doctors are in agreement. I think a lot of us treat doctors that way. Oh, the doctor said. It's like the word of God. My doctor said this, and then that's the final word, right? No one can argue with it. Well, I was watching a video with a gentleman just yesterday. He was in a car wreck, and he was told in no uncertain terms by his doctor, "You're never going to walk again." And he decided at that moment that he's like, okay, that might happen. He's like, but I'm not going to accept that as the only possibility. In his own mind, he decided that doctor could be right. He wasn't like, no, but he was like, I'm not going to accept that that's the only possibility. And within a very short time, he was up and walking again. Okay. Now, many of us think that, oh, well, that was just dumb luck or whatever. I don't, in my own sense, is that that's not dumb luck. When we can take information from different sources and different people, and we use that to inform our choices, our decisions, but we also don't just accept what an expert says. It doesn't matter, yoga teacher, whoever. We're willing to make our own choice. And that's why I said earlier, like, if I see in class someone's ignoring me or they're doing whatever they do, that's their journey. I could be wrong, right? So I'm just sharing what I've seen, what I've learned. Maybe they know more than me. Usually that's not the case, because usually if you're taking a yoga class, part of the reason you're taking the yoga class is because you're wanting to be under the guidance of someone who hopefully has more experience and more knowledge than you. But just like the doctor, just like the physical therapist, just like anyone else, you're going to find differences of opinion. You can definitely find yoga teachers who differ with me on my opinion about certain things or what you should or shouldn't do, and that's perfectly fine. So in the end, it is your decision, but it's also your responsibility. Who do you listen to? What advice do you take? That's what being an adult is all about, right? That's what adulting is all about. Is I'll make the decision. Your doctor's not responsible. You get bad advice from your doctor. You listen to your doctor unquestionably. You end up worse. It's not your doctor's fault, right? It was your choice ultimately to listen to the doctor. All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. We'll come back onto our back. So just rest for a moment. So my point is that once you come into a pose and you find that, oh yes, there is pain there when pain really shouldn't be present, that usually indicates you already have damage, you already have an injury, which again is very common, so don't be alarmed if that's the case. Now you have responsibility to make a decision. Is it therapeutic for me to allow that discomfort and pain? Is that actually going to help either manage the damage or possibly lead to a complete healing? Or is it just going to make things worse? All right, let's bring our legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out. And then we'll do a cattail next. Okay, so for the cattail, we take the left leg up and we drop it over to the right. Prop your head up on the right hand and elbow, take the legs apart. And then bending the knee, we reach back and grab the foot. Should feel a stretch in the front of your thigh. And then the more you lean back or lay back, the left shoulder toward the ground, the deeper the twist goes, okay? So that sort of question is something that my teacher, Paul Grilly, who I learned yin yoga from, he put it this way. There's a question we should ask when we're doing yoga postures and yoga in general, which is this pain good for me? So when we encounter pain, when we encounter discomfort, when we encounter a boundary or a border of what we sense is okay for us, most of us have that. We have it physically, we have it mentally, we have it emotionally, where there's a point at which we feel like this is too much. I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm out of what's familiar. I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know if this is good or bad. Now, in my experience and what I've learned teaching spirituality and yoga and all of this stuff for the better part of my life, so over half my life, is that in general that's a good thing. That is something we should be experiencing on a somewhat regular basis, whether it's physical health we want or we want to realize our full potential emotionally or psychologically. It really doesn't matter. We all have a sort of invisible cage that we live in. And again, let's just use physical, right? I get to a point, I start to feel discomfort or pain, and for me, what that triggers in me is I need to stop this, right? It might be after 15 push-ups. It might be after running a mile or 3 miles or 12 miles. It might be going into a hot yoga class and feeling the heat. It could be a cold shower, right? Turning on or getting in a cold pool. Your body just sends you sensations, and then your brain interprets that as, this needs to stop right now. I'm not okay. So I've shared with everybody before that like a cold shower is something I do pretty regularly on this at this point, and it still very uncomfortable. It still is like my body is saying, this is not okay. So I basically have to override that pain response, because it's essentially a pain response. It's essentially my body is saying, we can't handle this, we can't take this. So it took me a while to do that, to override that. At first, I could only be in the cold shower for a few seconds, and it wasn't even all the way cold. It was just mildly chilly. But that's how sort of cold adverse I am. I'm sort of built that way. I don't have a lot of extra padding, if you will, to keep me warm. It's just a body type thing. It's not better or worse. So the trade-off for not having a lot of extra padding is you get cold super easily. So you will see me in the middle of summer in Georgia when it's like 90 degrees out, and I will still be carrying around like a jacket or some kind of covering. Not because I need it outside, but the minute I go indoors anywhere in Georgia, they're blasting the AC full blast, and I will get chills very quickly, because usually I'm also covered in sweat because it's hot outside. So I go outside, I start sweating, I go inside, and immediately I catch a chill. So, again, it's not better or worse. It just is the way that it is. Other people, they don't have that problem. They might be dying of heat outside, but then when they come inside and it's, AC's running and all that, they feel great. In winter, they feel great. So that's an example of that pain response. Now, some of you follow me on Patreon, and you may have seen some of the posts I made. In fact, there was one this week about the benefits of cold exposure. Let's switch sides. So this isn't something I made up or came up with. This isn't something that, is in some ancient yogic text full of superstition. This is something that they're researching currently. Usually it's called cryotherapy, which, again, just in simplistic terms, cold exposure. So there's at least some evidence saying that like 2 minutes, 3 minutes of cold exposure on a fairly regular basis, like maybe every other day or every third day, is going to be really good for your health over the long term. So that's why I do it. I don't do it just to make myself miserable. As I've said before, and I want to repeat here, again, my teacher didn't say pain is good, right? That might be how some of us think. There's the old saying, no pain, no gain, right? So some of us might just equate discomfort and pain with, oh, well, something good must be happening. Not always. Not always. You can do things that are just painful you should not be in pain. So again, at the opening of the class today, I mentioned that if you're healthy, if every joint and every muscle in your body is perfectly healthy, again, very often that's not the case, but if that is the case, then pain generally should be avoided. Not discomfort, but pain, okay? Where's the line? I don't know. That's one of the difficulties, is it can be tricky to know when we cross the line from that's really uncomfortable to that's outright, like painful. So again, it's not a perfect science. This is something that is more nuanced, and it's partly through practice that we learn where that is for us. So again, Paul said, is this pain good for me? So we're assessing, we come into a pose, and again, if we're perfectly healthy, we should not really feel pain. Most of us are not perfectly healthy. So there will be certain positions, certain poses, certain things that we do where it's like, ooh, that's painful. So then, again, the next question starts to become, okay, I'm in pain. Is this pain good for me? And again, I think that that can be a complex question to answer. Again, you can go to your doctor. She might give you her opinion, and she may be right or wrong, even though she's a doctor. And again, I know many people in medicine, so I'm not just talking theory here. I personally know people. And yes, doctors are experts. They've studied, they've learned, they've done all kinds of stuff. They're still human. They still make mistakes. They still have different opinions. So again, that's why you get a second or third opinion from a doctor, because not all doctors know everything. So it's important to remember. If that gentleman I was talking about, his feeling on his own journey was that if he had accepted the doctor's diagnosis, he wouldn't be walking. He would still be in a wheelchair. So, you know, he felt that it was very important that because he kept an open mind, he didn't say, no, doc, I'm going to walk. He wasn't like that. He wasn't like belligerent, and he wasn't like all up in his face, and he wasn't super gung-ho. He just kept doubt. He's like, you know, doctors can only know what they know. They only know about the past. Doctors are treating the general population. And again, in our country, most of the population is relatively unhealthy, unfortunately. So, you know, the doctor is just talking from past experience. And, you know, this guy's saying, hey, maybe I'm the exception to the rule. Maybe my lifestyle and the way that I think and the way that I approach things makes me the exception to the rule. And he was. Now, whether you might think, well, that's a fluke. Well, later in his life, he got diagnosed with terminal cancer. He was told he had a 20% chance of beating it, which is fairly low, obviously. And he applied the same approach to cancer. He was told he didn't have very long to live. It was like 3 weeks. You know, and now it's been years, and he's cancer-free, and he beat it. Same mindset. Again, maybe you think, well, lightning just struck twice. Okay. You know, I can't make you believe that this guy's mind was affecting the outcomes, but that's what I believe. That's what he believes. You know, our minds are very, very powerful. Excuse me. So let's go ahead and come on out of that. All right, you can bring your legs in, give them a squeeze, shake it out. And then come on up to seated. Let's explore half dragonfly next. So feel free to sit on something, legs are wide. And then we'll fold over the left leg. And two areas, one is here, and the other is here. And we should feel both. Or I'd like you to try and feel both. You may only be able to get one, and that's okay. So we're coming here, and then I can roll the right shoulder back over the left for more intensity, okay? So again, this is something that we occasionally hear about. You know, sometimes it's phrased as like the power of positive thinking. Now, this guy has a very different view on things like positive thinking. Some people believe that all you need to do is think, you know, I'm healed, I'm healed, I'm healed, I'm healed, and that's it. His view is that, you know, again, you need to keep that door of possibility open, but then you need to take action toward manifesting the goal that you want to manifest. So he's not, again, we might hear positive thinking or the power of positive thinking. We think, oh, all I need to do is think positive. But if you're in the field that I'm in, I know that most of you aren't, but maybe you've rubbed shoulders with people like this. I certainly have. You meet people in spirituality, in yoga, who are detached from reality. And they use things like positive thinking, good vibes, all these kinds of things as a way of avoiding responsibility, as a way of avoiding reality, as a way of avoiding, growing up and, again, taking responsibility. So again, this gentleman, his approach was the doctor might be right, but doctors also make mistakes. Doctors also, he might have been right for anybody else. You're not going to walk again. And if it were anyone else, that might have been true. But what this gentleman was saying is that may not be true for me. He didn't say it's definitely not true. He just said it may not be true for me. He kept that door open. He explored the possibility that the doctor could be wrong. Now think about your own experience with doctors and experts and things like that, right? They'll give you their opinion, that might happen with me. You might have a certain body type or something, and you report to me, oh, when I do this pose, this and that happens. And I might say, yeah, I don't think you're ever going to do that pose, and that's okay, right? Most of you have heard me say that before. Yoga is not about doing specific postures. It's not a performative. It's not like gymnastics. It's not like ballet, where we're trying to create certain shapes so other people can look at us and be impressed. That's not the point. Here we're trying to create hermetic stress that coaxes the body to become healthier and stronger. That is the point. Do I need to do a specific pose to do that? No, I do not. I have a variety of different positions, postures, exercises that can coax that hermetic stress out of my body, okay? But let's say you're really in love with a certain yoga pose or position or something like that. And you hear my opinion, hey, I don't think you're going to ever be able to do that. You'll notice most of the time I'll say, I think. You'll notice that I very rarely speak in absolutes. Like, no, you're never going to do that. Because what do I know? I'm very aware, like this gentleman, that even an expert, informed opinion can be in error, can be wrong. So I might say, yeah, I don't think you're going to ever be able to do that. Maybe I'll say something like, well, your arms are short relative to the length of your torso, and it just looks like a proportion thing, so I don't think you're going to be able to do that. You can accept that, right? But you might say, I know Doug has done this a long time. I know that he's studied a lot, but I'm just going to leave that door open. And actually, that's usually what I recommend. I don't usually tell people, oh, you're not going to do that pose, or I don't think you'll ever be able to do that pose. It's not really the way I approach things, but I'm just saying, imagine I said that, Let's switch sides. So if I did, I said one day, yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to do that. It's okay. It's not a big deal. But you had your heart set on it. You kept that possibility open. Then you never know. One day you might find that you're doing the very thing that, someone who is supposed to be an expert, somebody who is supposed to know about this stuff told you no, and that person might have been me, okay? So again, I think sometimes people hear me talk about this stuff and they think I'm like, oh, question everything your doctor says, or your doctor doesn't know what she's talking about. It's not like that. It's just recognize the reality of the situation. A doctor is a person. She went through certain kinds of training. Depending on her age, that training may have been 10, 20 years ago. And a lot can change in scientific literature, in expert opinion in that time. Does your doctor keep up on the latest findings in literature? Doctors are overworked. All the ones that I know anyway. In fact, everyone I know in medicine, whether they're doctors or nurses or, I mean, pretty much across the board, they're overworked. So are we really expecting our doctor to take the time to, do on their own time to research all the latest stuff? Because there's every week there are new studies being published. There are new things coming out, new findings. So again, I'm just trying to educate you a little bit about the reality of the situation. Your doctor is going to give you her best opinion, right? Her best guess, if you will, based on experience, based on a training, based on the literature that she's aware of, which may or may not be current. That doesn't mean that that is the only possibility. Because the truth is, who knows what's possible, right? We don't really know. If you went back 500 years and you talked about radio, right, that there are invisible waves moving through the air, and that when you turn on this device, it can pick up these invisible waves and decode them, and then you can hear music. Even today, it sounds mysterious and magical. I mean, do you really understand how radio works? What about your phone, the internet? We just accept it because we have these devices. So it must be scientific, it must be true, right? But then we hear about something like telekinesis or mind reading or telepathy. Oh, that's, total garbage, hogwash, that can't be true. Why do we accept that there are radio waves that can be decoded by radio, but then we are so skeptical that there might be mind waves or thought waves just because we haven't experienced it? So I'm not saying I believe in telepathy or that you should. I'm just saying my own point of view is I don't really know. If someone says they're telepathic, I'm going to be very skeptical because I've not seen or met many people who are, to be honest with you. And so when someone comes and says, hey, I'm telepathic, I'm going to be skeptical, but I am going to be open-minded, which means that there are certain things that this individual could do to change my mind. And that's the difference between closed-minded versus open-minded and skeptical. Closed-minded is basically nothing is going to change my mind. I'm closed, right? It's not. So again, many of us, when we get a doctor, the doctor says something to us, we become closed-minded. That's it. I'm never going to walk again, right? And if someone comes to us and says, hey, you never know. No, the doctor said. I hear that all the time from people. My doctor says, like, that's it. Doctor says, no more debate. Doctor said. So end of story. That is closed-minded. Open-minded is, well, my doctor said this, but you never really know, right? Anything is possible. Who knows? And again, you may not think that actually influences outcomes. I think it very much does. Whether, again, you believe because of God or some higher power, or, as this gentleman says, he will make certain choices or decisions because his mind is open, right? If someone says, hey, let's go to this thing and explore you walking again, if you've already made up your mind, you're going to be like, that's a waste of time. Doctor says I'm not going to walk. I'm not going to go. Versus, well, okay, it's possible. Let's go. Let's take a look. All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. Okay, we'll bring those legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out. And we'll finish with twisted roots. So make sure you know your left and right. Left knee over right, and then knees to the left. You can move your knees higher or lower, meaning closer to your face or down away from your face. You can play around with head and arm and shoulder position to maximize both the twist and the stretch out here in the hip, okay, and what are called your abductors. So again, mind is very powerful, and this idea of possibility, very, very powerful. What is possible? We don't really know. We only know what the past has told us. So again, 500 years ago, if I said it's possible that one day we will discover invisible waves that we can control and send through the air to make music show up anywhere, practically anywhere, you would have thought I was crazy, okay? And now it's a common occurrence, right? Radio, television, devices receiving invisible waves in the air. Again, this is something none of us really understand. We just take it for granted because it's a part of our lives. So again, today we hear about telepathy and we all roll our eyes and think, oh, whatever, this is some kooky out there stuff. And then what if tomorrow the government comes out and says, hey, we discovered telepathy is real and here's how it works, and there are these mind waves, they are generated by the mind and they are produced this and they go this far and telepathy is real. Then all of a sudden your opinion would change, wouldn't it? You'd be like, oh, well, I guess telepathy is a thing. So again, what is possible, what is not possible? We don't really know. We only know what has been documented, what is common, what's happened in the past. And my point is you can use this to your advantage. When someone tells you something is not possible, you're never going to heal. This is going to happen to you, that's going to happen to you. You have X gene, you have Y gene, your whole family has, an alcoholic problem with, drug abuse or alcoholism or schizophrenia or Alzheimer's or dementia or whatever it is. You do not have to take that laying down. You have a lot of power and influence on whether or not you accept that outcome. Now, again, a very important part of what this gentleman was sharing yesterday was that he never denies that what he was told might be reality. So again, it's not escapism, it's not fantasy, it's not denying reality, which again is a danger in my field of work, because there are many people who enter into spirituality because they don't like reality the way that it is. So this gentleman said right at the beginning of his interview that he decided a long time ago that he was going to accept reality as it is. And so if you're understanding, if you're following, and you may not be, and that's okay because this is a rather deep subject, but if you're following along, you're understanding that this same gentleman is saying, I'm going to accept reality as it is, but I'm also going to question people who try and tell me what reality is. Okay? So again, a scientist, a doctor coming along, scientists saying, there's no such thing as angels. How would the scientists know? All the scientists can really say is, I've never seen an angel, or I've not seen proof that there are angels. But to come out and say there's no such thing as angels, that's arrogant. Or there's no such thing as telepathy. Or there's no such thing as faith healing or spontaneous healing. That's just arrogance. Okay, all that person is really saying is, I've never seen it. I've not seen proof of it. But again, reality is different than what other people have experienced, what other people have seen, what other people believe. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and switch sides. Okay, so on this side, it's going to be right knee over left, and then knees down to the right. So I share with you this story about this gentleman because this gentleman approaches things more or less the way that I do. And it's interesting to come across people who, again, have been very successful implementing something that you are doing. And while I've not cured myself of cancer or learned to walk after being told by a doctor that I'll never walk again, I have had certain similar experiences in my own life where it looks like something is happening, and the reality is that, oh, this is just it. This is how it's going to be, and I'm just going to have to accept it as it is. And again, both this gentleman and me both have a willingness to do that. So again, this isn't a fantastical or an aggressive, no, I'm not going to accept my fate and I'm going to, fight until I get the results I want. It is, I will question that outcome or that reality, and I will take steps and measures to explore the possibility that that assessment is incorrect. And what you might find is if you do that, you often are able to discover that what you've been told is a foregone conclusion is not. So examples of this might be something like, you're going to have surgery on your back. That you've got XYZ condition, and the only way you're going to be free of pain is surgery. Now again, that may be true. And after exploring other options, you might find, okay, yep, surgery is my best option. But you can also, again, question that opinion. You can go get a second opinion. You can also explore other options. We live in a wonderful time, everybody, where information is virtually free. And information that in the past would have cost you a lot of money or been very difficult to procure. Information from people who are maybe not only more knowledgeable than your doctor, they may actually be experts who across the world know more than anybody. Okay, and because of the internet, we have access to these individuals, maybe limited, but very often we have access to their books, their publications, their teachings, videos of them speaking about subjects. So again, your local doctor, your personal doctor, may or may not be up on the latest findings, the latest information. And then the other aspect of it is we have these ancient healing traditions, Ayurveda, classical Chinese medicine, and folk healing that's been with us for thousands of years. And what we've done in the past is we basically said, well, all of that's superstition. So anything that hasn't been studied scientifically is hogwash. It's BS. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not even going to explore that option, right? But what we're finding is a lot of the science, a lot of the drugs, a lot of the approaches that modern medicine uses to heal are based on these folk traditional approaches to healing. That a drug that you might be given by your doctor is actually derived from an herb that's been used for thousands of years to treat the very condition that your doctor is giving you the drug for. So is all folk wisdom, traditional wisdom, BS that, is just superstition? No. Because if it were, then pharmaceuticals and doctors and scientists wouldn't be studying these methods. So you have access to all of this. If you have a condition, you have access to more information than you ever have in the past about how you might be able to treat or approach this condition, right? And again, you can work with your doctor if your doctor is open-minded and they are willing to listen. But my main point is this: nobody, not me, not your doctor, not your physical therapist, not your spouse, not your parents, no one cares more about your health than you do. So take responsibility for it. Don't expect your doctor to go do all the research on your condition. She's busy. She has many patients. She is overworked and stressed out. Okay? Instead, you can take the responsibility, and if you want to work with your doctor, you can bring her the research you found and ask her opinion. And if she doesn't have time for that, if she doesn't have interest in that, you can find another doctor. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. So again, people often misunderstand what I'm saying. So what I am not saying is that your doctor is bad and that you should ignore your doctor. What I am saying is your doctor is overworked, your doctor is stressed out, your doctor may have graduated from med school a long time ago, and so the research and the information may have evolved and changed, and she may or may not have time to be up to date on that. I'll also say this, because this is true, there's a lot of financial incentive for doctors to simply prescribe meds, whether that is the best approach or not. So just keep that in mind. I'm not saying anyone's evil or there's a conspiracy theory. There's just incentives built into the system. So rather than the doctor saying, hey, take this herb, the doctor will say, take this prescription. Okay? There are incentives in place for that. All right, let's bring the legs in. So my point is, you have a lot of power. You have a lot of information, and no one is really responsible for your health more than you are. And that's a good thing. It's your health, it's your body, and ultimately you are given the responsibility for taking care of it. So it's a pretty perfect system.